Shalom everyone! I know this time you can see my phone and my computer in my sunglasses. This is part 2 to my last video. If you haven't seen that one, you really need to watch that first. The enemy does not want this simple truth out. He's worked too hard on complicating things to just let his twisted ropes be untied without a war. But my last video talks about the Otiot as the first form of the written word from the beginning. The cycle starts with the seed, which, don't forget, a seed really has no beginning and no end. Think about the cycle of a seed. There's a lot there. We are seeking the way, asking for the ancient path, standing in it, and walking in it. This is the planting place. The seeds have been being planted by Yahweh, the gardener. Don't forget that Yeshua appeared to Mary, as the gardener. Yahweh appears to us in his living word. Now comes the next part in the cycle, the roots. A parent root is 2 Otiot put together. A child root is 3 Otiot put together. I know sometimes I say oats for plural and sometimes I say Otiot. Otiot is really the true plural, proper way to say it. A lot of times it's just kind of more comfortable to say oats. It just kind of comes out because we're used to English. So with each oat that you add, the meaning of the word grows, but it always relates somehow to the original root, the parent root. No matter how many oats you add to a word, it'll never change the meaning of the seed. I'm not going to go too far into detail about, a lot of the details with the roots. I'm only going to go as far as Yahweh leads, and read Ecclesiastes, Koheleth, chapter 12 to really understand why. That is actually the first chapter of scripture that Yahweh started us on in our very first week of homeschooling, and you'll see why when you read it. And that reminds me, I am very aware of how many times in these studies that I actually repeat the same words over and over, and there's a reason for that. It's not my doing. In fact, it's uncomfortable for me thinking about how, everybody's gonna get so annoyed with hearing me say the same words over and over again. But Abba says it's purposeful. It's cyclical teaching and it's important. He has gathered us all here together in this mishpacha, family of like-minded truth seekers, gathering together live on Caregivers Channel, where he is feeding us with real food, non-GMO, no artificial flavors, organic. Do you see how many models there are everywhere? Everything in the spiritual manifests in the physical. In this video, I'm using the example of the word YARAY. This is a word that he has been teaching us through many studies now, and he is showing me personally about YARAYing him through everything in my life. It seems there are links under this video for Alan's studies on the word YARAY as well. His word is living and he will never stop teaching us. As we're going further in our study together, roots and different things, I just want to encourage everyone, don't get hung up on things such as spelling. There's no proper way to spell any Hebrew or Aramaic word in English. But don't let anything on this journey add confusion. That's the flesh. Just play in Elohim's sandbox. In fact, if there's anything, whether it's coming through YouTube or the mouths of other people, any kind of teaching or even thoughts that you have, if it stresses you out, the enemy has gotten involved or is trying to. Did you see the squirrel running on the fence? They're so cute. Just keep your armor on and kick that big hiney out. So I want to tell you this story really quick because I just kind of feel like it's important. Sometimes I get a little uncomfortable about sharing personal things, but I know that Yahweh teaches me in my sleep. A lot of times I wake up in the middle of a lesson. I never usually remember the lessons by the time I fully wake up. It must be just stored somewhere in my mind. But this one night, months ago, I woke up from my dog barking, and I got up to let her out, and I was in the middle of one of these lessons, half asleep, but I was having a conversation with Yahweh as I was walking to the door to let her out. After I let her out and I started walking to the bathroom, I asked him a question. I didn't really think to ask the question. It was still just part of my subconscious, whatever he was leading. And I asked him, how do we know what is true? And I was sitting there going to the bathroom, and he gave me an answer, and I said it out loud. And it was, you have to go back further than the roots, all the way to the seed. At that point, I woke up fully, but I remembered. I knew the question that I asked, and I knew the answer that he gave me, and I knew that I was supposed to go and write it down. I went and wrote it down on my whiteboard in my living room. I left it up there for a long time, and it didn't mean as much to me then as it does now. He's been teaching me what he meant by that. We'll continue getting it. And our Father gave us these Otiot as the written word so that we could have a visual model and way of communication. He sees everything from beginning to end. He knew that it would be a good thing to put his word into written form. And he knew that it was going to be changed by man however many times, and not just the forms or the image, but also the meanings and the definitions, the language and the culture. I mean, so much has changed. He knew that, and he knew that that is what was going to be being fed to his sheep. The shepherds out there have been leading their sheep astray because they've already gone astray. Probably most of them have never even been there in the first place, having any understanding of the living word. And I'm sure many of them started with a heart that wanted to, but you know, Satan and his minions, they come in immediately. Temptations, greed, and desire to do things your own way, and thinking that that's freedom, but it's actually enslavement. The Father's teachings are freedom. That's why he gave them to us, because they're good, and he's a loving Father. Yahweh told us that he would provide a planting place, that he was going to gather his sheep himself. That is what he is doing. All of Yahweh's models are to teach us about what's more real than the physical, which is the spiritual. We're told in the word that everything unseen is more real than the seen. But Abba Father gave us many models that we can see to teach us about the unseen. That is what we are all doing together now. We are pitching our tent together with the Father. We're all going back to the beginning. We're all going back to the seed. So he gave us these pictures. If the Otiot is the seed, what is the next step in the cycle of a seed? After the seed comes the roots. And this is how definitions start to form. So I'm going to show you now how definitions started to develop. To look at the Otiot and just look at their beautiful, simple meanings, and then look at what our translations are today. Like, how did you get from A to Z? And so I'm going to show you how that works. It's really important to remember that the translators were hired to translate based on their ability to translate language, and not based on their relationship with Yahuwah and the living word. The reason why we have so many problems in our translations is that most likely the majority of the translators did not really have an understanding for the living word. The other day, Caregiver brought up a super important point about King James and how he had this fabulous idea to take one Hebrew or Aramaic word and use one English word, which just can't happen. It just doesn't make any sense. And Alan always talks about how he grew up in an Aramaic speaking family, and he would ask his jittu, his grandpa, about one word in Aramaic and what it means. His jittu would have a really hard time explaining that word in English. It was never one word. It was hard to even do it in several words because he felt the need to explain it. And Alan says how he would watch the difficulty of his jittu trying to explain the understanding of this original word because there's so much attached to it. There's, meaning to it. So this is the book that I use most for going into the roots all the way back to the very first definitions from the Hebrew culture, the definitions that they would have understood. When it comes to learning about the Otiot, learning all there is to learn about it, I really only go so far. I only go as far as the Father leads me, and at a certain point I feel led to just talk to him about it and let him bring more understanding. This book is written by Jeff Benner. If anybody remembers, there was a live stream not that long ago. I don't really have a good sense of time though. Alan had said in one of the live streams, he was talking about the Otiot and he mentioned Jeff Benner, and he was kind of just like, hey, where's Jeff Benner at? Anybody have a connection with him? Let's get him on here. Let's find out where he's at. And Jeff actually left a comment on my video and was really inspired by the last video of the seed and the mindset. I thought that was really cool. Alan mentioned Jeff, and a couple months later he finds us. Alan learned a lot of what he knows about the Otiot from Jeff Benner. Now, Alan, he just walks with the Father. He learns what he needs to learn and then takes it from there, walking with the Father. Alan's thing is really all about, right down to the seed. So he went, as far as he needed to, and then pitched his tent with the Father on it and just did it the way that Abba was leading him to do it. And right now, as I'm using the lexicon to bring these definitions together, I also only go as far as I feel led to go. The Father takes over and just starts talking to me about it. That is the most important way to do it, is by learning from the Father. His word is living, and so we learn from him. So the word YARAY is translated a lot in scripture as the word fear. This is the one that has boggled us the most. We cannot understand why on earth would these translators use the word fear. In some places it makes sense. Even when it makes sense, it still doesn't give the full understanding. But in some places it just makes absolutely no sense at all, especially because of our idea and understanding of this English word fear that is totally abstract. And the way that we see the word fear in our culture today, it just makes no sense to say something like fear of Yahuwah is the beginning of wisdom and knowledge. We've been talking about YARAY a lot lately, and this is a word that the Father has been teaching me about with my own personal experiences, including doing these videos. There's also different versions of the word YARAY. Like there's YARAY, there's YARA, YARAT, but don't get confused because all the different versions, they all go back to the same root. It comes down to the concrete idea. So when you take two separate Otiot and you start putting them together, they form roots. The next step in the cycle, after you plant the seed, then the roots will start to grow. So we're going to start with the root of YARAY, which is just Yar, Yod, Resh. So Yod is the arm and the hand, and Resh is the man's head. The Hebrew culture understanding of this is hand of a man. It's probably not making sense to you yet, but what happens when we leave things in the hands of man? Trouble. When we leave things in the hands of man, that's something to fear if you're not walking with the Father. For the root Yar, it is the abstract definition that is fear, and the action is throw. Think about this for a minute. If I'm going to pick up a ball or something and throw it, an action, but in order to do that action, I had to think about it to do it. I don't just pick something up and throw it without thinking about it first. In order to pick something up and throw it, you have to think about doing it. I'm gonna go pick up that ball and throw it now. It really has to do with doing things from our own mindset, from our own thoughts. You think to do something, so you do it. A ball moving came from a source, and this is the source, a man. When you are throwing a ball, you are the source who thought to do it. And I'm just going to show you how cool this is. So this is YARAY. This is Yar, but if you take the aleph and you put it in the middle, it actually spells the word for river, Yar. River is also something that moves, that comes from a source, but it's not man. When you put the aleph in the middle, the Father as the headship, it is not man who makes a river flow. If you go to the source of a river, it is YHWH. Going back to YARAY, child root that we have here, what this word is really talking about is being yoked to a headship, and the actions that follow come from the mindset of whatever you are yoked to. That is how this word could be used to talk about don't fear, don't YARAY. When he's talking about that, he's talking about don't YARAY anything else. If it's talking about anything else besides YHWH, it's don't YARAY. Don't yoke yourself to the mindset of that, because your actions that follow will be scary. But when it tells us to YARAY YHWH, it's talking about being yoked to YHWH, not leaving things in the hands of man, but instead being yoked to the mindset of the Father, which is the mindset of his word, Yeshua. Yoked and taught by the Father, that has a lot to do with his teachings. So if we are being taught by him, learning his Torah, his teachings, his loving instructions for us, which causes us to develop the mindset of Yeshua, our actions and our work will be influenced by the Father, by his word. I forgot to be looking at the camera again. There are other oats that you can add to this root. In Alan's study, he adds the hay. In one of his studies, he adds the hay. at the end, Yarah, which adds the meaning of us being in awe of him and receiving meltah as we are learning from him. So I also want to mention something else. I'm going to mention it because it's really, really cool. The word Torah, the Father's teachings, is also related to this word, and somehow, and this is where I have not really gone deep into understanding why, because again, it doesn't matter to me, but the root word yar is also related to the root word ra. And don't get confused, because this is not the same ra as evil, because that is a ayin right here. Some of the oats make similar sounds. Don't get confused about that. This is the root word of Torah, the Father's teachings. If you put a tau here and you put a wa, this is Torah, and this is related to YARAY because of the roots being related. And I mention that because this is what I meant when I was saying how all of the oats relate to each other, all of the Otiot relate to each other, and so do all of the words that are formed from the oats. And you know, I don't know why, but it kind of reminds me of a banyan tree. I don't even know everything about a banyan tree and how it grows, but you know how a banyan tree kind of looks like all these trees, all these different trunks, but they're all part of the same tree. That's kind of what the Otiot reminds me of, and all of the original language, because they all relate to each other, because they all are the living word. They all are Yeshua. They are all meant to give understanding of the Father's ways. When he says something like, to YARAY Yahweh in all things, and that is the beginning of wisdom and knowledge, you can see how we can connect all these ideas that make so much sense. To YARAY Yahweh is to be under the influence of his teachings. If we are yoked to him, if he is our headship, and he is number one on a list of one, and we are yoked to him, so when he moves, we move, and so we go through life like that, and we allow him to teach us, not the world. We allow our Father to teach us his ways, and that is what causes our mindset to be yoked to him. We develop the mindset of Yeshua, and so all of our actions and the work that we do will be the work of Yeshua. It really all has to do with mindset. And notice like that the mindset is the heart of this word here. Again, I want to bring up Caleb and Joshua as well as David. They all had situations that were humanly impossible, worldly impossible. Caleb and Joshua were the only two of the 12 who were looking at these humongous giants, knowing that they are the size of grasshoppers compared to these giants. And even though it's completely humanly impossible, and there's no way that anybody would ever believe that, you know, you could stand up to a giant, they YARAYed Yahweh. They were under the influence of the Father's teachings. It really didn't matter what they were seeing. They were not walking by sight. They were walking by Aman. Aman is the word faith. We walk by faith, not by sight. They were walking by Aman, and that is being in agreement with the word of Yahweh. That is why they had no problem going back and saying, what are you talking about? That look at the land that Yahweh has given us. It is amazing. He already said that he would give these giants into our hands. Why are you guys YARAYing them? Same thing with David. He was like, why haven't you guys gotten rid of these giants yet? Is it not Yahweh who fights for us? I'll go take care of them. And they tried to put worldly armor on him, breastplate on him, and, you know, helmet and like all this stuff, and like weighing him down. And he's like, get this stuff off of me. I can't move. I don't need this stuff. I have my armor. Yahweh is our armor. All of Ephesians 6, it's all Yeshua. It's all the living word. It's all being in agreement with him. Look at every single piece of it. The helmet of salvation. Yeshua is our salvation. The breastplate of righteousness. Yeshua is the righteous one. The belt of truth. Yeshua is the truth. The sandals of the good news of shalom. Yeshua is the good news. The shield of Aman, faith. That is being in agreement with the word because you are being washed by it. Yeshua is the word. What is our one weapon? The sword. The sword is every word that comes out of the mouth of Yahweh. Our weapon is the word of Yahweh. Remember the time that Joshua had crossed over the Yarden, the Jordan River, and who was standing there with his sword drawn? Yeshua was standing there as like a sign. I mean, they're about to enter into a time of battle after battle after battle after battle. And Yeshua is standing there to signify, I'm the one who fights for you, if you're in agreement with me. So don't forget that if our weapon is the word of Yahweh, the enemy's weapon, his sword, is opposition to the word of Yahweh. The enemy's attacks are going to come through lies and accusations against us. If we don't agree with it because we've got our shield up, our shield is agreement with the word of Yahweh, Yeshua, our Father's teachings. That is how we YARAY him, because we are yoked to our Father's teachings, the living word, Yeshua. Do you see how everything connects? And you hear how many times I repeat the same words over and over and over again, because it's just that simple. Those are the important details. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that. The confusion lies in the way that we've been taught and being educated by the world. And so because of all of that stuff that's been added, there has been so much complication added to our minds. And so when we have to go backwards and unlearn stuff, we don't really realize how simple it is because our minds have been so complicated. It is Satan who likes to complicate and confuse. That is why we live in a world today where there has been so much stuff added to this world that we don't even know where to look. People are walking around with these little square computers. How many different things can you do with that? When you go all the way back to the seed, you think about how simplistic everything was, and before the world was flooded with so much. The more you add, the more confusion that can occur, which is why confusion is everywhere you look today. You'll see when I eventually give my testimony, whenever that is and however it comes out, you will see how Yahweh literally has prepared me for this my entire life. And he's still preparing me to stand through anything on his word and his word alone, through anything that comes, be it criticism from the world. We already know. He already told us. But I really hope that you got the understanding that when you YARAY anything else besides Yahweh, that can cause fear. And fear causes us to try and fix things. Fix whatever it is that we're fearing by taking matters into our own hands, the hands of man. Okay, this is kind of a silly example, but one of the ways that Yahweh really started giving me an example to go by, a life experience to start understanding what it truly means to YARAY him. My son started doing BMX. This wasn't that long ago. BMX is bicycle motocross racing. You know, at first I thought, oh, this is cool, this is something that he's into, this is fun, you know, it's fun watching your kids do anything, until I started seeing what a dangerous sport it is. And I'm watching one kid after another crash out there on the track. I'm watching my own son crash on the track. I started to fear, especially when I started seeing ambulances with these kids taking them to the hospital. You moms know what I'm talking about. What was I going to do? I'm telling you, the fear got so strong that I literally would just pray the entire time. You know, I thought about it. Okay, how far is my fear going to go? What is it going to cause me to do? If I continue to YARAY this fear of BMX and my son doing it, eventually it's just going to cause me to make him quit. Is that the right thing to do? There was a couple of days, the entire time I'm there, hours, I was feeling the fear, not saying that the fear just goes away. It's not magic, but I had to continuously be reminding myself that he is in control. I knew that I could not do a darn thing by worrying or by being afraid. Maybe that's a silly example, but maybe some of you moms out there can identify, and it was an example for him to start teaching me what it truly meant to let go of the worry and the fear, stay yoked to him, and know that he is Elohim and that he is in control. He's still doing BMX and he loves it and he's really good at it. And I'm still YARAYing Yahweh about it. I don't think I'm ever gonna stop having the mom feeling. But every time that worry and fear creeps up, I'm gonna remember my Father's words. Do not fret, for it only leads to evil. Leave it all in his hands, Chavarim. We certainly don't want it to be in our hands. Love you all. Shalom.
The desert wind's a liar and will try to soothe your soul with faded words you can hear him say. Don't try to fight against me, you know you'll never win. You've already thrown your last chance away. Hey, he's full of lies. Oh, don't get taken in. His blindfold will lead you directly into sin, and I pray you never listen to that lying desert wind. Yeah, the desert wind's a faker and will try to make you think that it's the sun who's blinding both your eyes. Before you can focus on a solitary thing, you've come to know the master of disguise is full of lies. Oh, don't get taken in. His blindfold will lead you directly into sin, and I pray you never listen to that lying desert wind. Yeah, I pray you never listen to that lying desert wind. Oh, I pray you never listen to that lying desert wind. An angel came to me today, sent to lead me home. There is truth, there is hope. I never would have known that the Lord would forgive me after such a life of sin. But now I know that desert wind is full of lies. Oh, His blindfold will lead you directly into sin, and I pray you never listen to that lying desert wind. Oh, I pray you never listen to that lying desert wind. Yeah, he's full of lies. Oh, don't be taken in. His blindfold will lead you directly into sin, and I pray you never listen to that lying desert wind. Yeah, I pray you never listen to that lying desert wind. Oh, I pray you never listen to that lying desert wind. I pray you never listen to that lying desert wind.